Welcome to the Stellar Vault. Say hi in the comments to awaken the archive. Then like, subscribe, and let the tale begin.
The Admiral smiled as the ink dried, and 1,000 ships stood ready behind the silence. The grand hall of the Galactic Concordium gleamed, marble white, immaculate, lit from above by an artificial star built to mimic the birth of suns. It cast a warm, almost holy light across the delegates assembled before the high dais. Peace banners shimmered. Protocols were flawless. The air itself had been scrubbed, perfumed, calibrated to suggest serenity. But perfection has a flavor, and beneath it, something waited. The moment was meant to feel historic. It didn't. It felt rehearsed. At the center of the platform stood Admiral Vec Trassel of the Hegemony Central Fleet, flanked by guards in ceremonial scale armor. He extended his hand toward the Terran ambassador beside him. "Let this treaty bind us," Trassel said, "not as conquerors and conquered, but as civilizations walking into a shared tomorrow." The words hung with precision. His voice carried the practiced warmth of a master negotiator. The Terran ambassador, Minister Alric Desan, smiled and pressed his hand to Trassel's in ritual contact. "We walk in peace," Desan replied, just loud enough for the microphones. "Together." Applause. The crowd, hundreds of species and thousands of diplomats, rose in chorus. Flags lowered, music played from unseen speakers. But behind the diplomatic mask, not all eyes were blind. High on the perimeter tier, in the shadow of the security columns, a man in a dark naval uniform leaned against a polished support pillar. He didn't move. He didn't applaud. Colonel Revik Halran, Terran Defense Advisor. Never introduced. Never acknowledged. His badge bore no name, just a number and a black sigil from Earth's inner defense grid. He wasn't here to celebrate. He was here to confirm, and he'd already seen everything he needed. The alien officers standing at attention behind Admiral Trassel wore full-dress Warfleet insignia. Their ships were listed as ceremonial escorts, but every last one was a dread carrier. Their weapons systems weren't cold. They were shadow-cycled, battle-ready. Trassel's hand lingered too long after the handshake. His expression, for the briefest second, flattened. They thought humanity was too slow, too young, too soft. Halran tapped a secure input on the inside of his cuff. No lights, no signal. But far above the diplomatic hall, something stirred in orbit. Within the dark space beyond the Concordium's security radius, a black cylinder rotated once. No lights, no markings. It was legally not present, according to all navigational arrays. But its systems were older than most navies. Buried deep within its AI core was a single function: monitor for betrayal. "Respond to Operation Twilight." A whisper crossed the Terran sublayer. 5 words only. Condition Iron Veil confirmed. Proceed to activation. Below, applause still echoed in the hall. Dignitaries were shaking hands. Glasses of iridescent wine raised. A group of Jail envoys were already drafting trade expansions with the Hegemony. No one noticed Colonel Halran was gone. No one noticed that every Terran aide in the room had stepped back, leaving the crowd like chess pieces cleared from a board. Meanwhile, across the void of system space, an encrypted order slipped into the deep code of Orbital Defense Node TH9 over Earth's northern hemisphere. Black Site Array Atlas 7, buried beneath Antarctic ice, cycled power to standby. Fleet Group Revenant, which officially did not exist, altered its course by precisely 0.033 degrees. The machines had waited patiently. The protocols were buried in human systems decades deep. Not reactionary, intentional. Back inside the Concordium chamber, Trassel turned toward the seated crowds and raised his voice. "Let history mark this day. Let the stars witness our unity." He turned to Dasan once more. "To peace, Minister." Dasan nodded with that same too pleasant smile and replied, "To peace, always." Far across the stars, inside a sealed mountain beneath the Andes, a man in a gray uniform pulled open a hardened command vault. Inside, a case marked with Earth's oldest military sigil, black on gray, ringed in silence. He entered a code, waited. The lights turned red. The Hegemony Admiral returned to his chambers that night, surrounded by guards. He made a call, encrypted, fast, direct. Treaty signed. Terrans compliant. Execute Phase 1 of Operation Twilight. Begin the advance. The reply came cold. Confirmed. On Earth, in a room with no windows, 2 words flickered to life on a buried screen. Stand by lifted. And in the dark between stars, something moved. Not loudly. Not yet. But with purpose. The fleet never stood down. It just held its breath. Colonel Revik Halrin stepped into the core elevator of Earth's deep command tier. No sound, no ceremony. The lift descended through kilometers of reinforced alloy, slicing beneath the crust like a spear to the planet's spine. Each meter down was another layer of deception falling away. On the surface, Earth still looked peaceful. Shuttles crossed blue skies. Ports buzzed. Markets ran without restriction. But underground, under ice, under oceans, everything had already moved. They had waited for this betrayal. Prepared for it. Built around it. Condition Iron Veil didn't mean panic. It meant the plan had finally matured. Halran stepped out into the Coldwell operations core, buried inside the Andes range, lined with pressure-resistant plating and old war steel from the Mars front. A dozen officers nodded as he entered. No one saluted. Not here. Not now. He approached the center console, thumbed a print. A deep mechanical tone answered. Command authenticated. Iron Veil confirmed. Elevation to Sunwatch tier. Granted. He nodded. Begin full readiness sequence. We proceed to Phase 1. In orbit, Fleet Group Revenant was already moving, its course shift so minor no scanner would flag it, but it put them just outside Hegemony firing range. The group's 4 cruisers, 6 destroyers, and 3 stealth carriers and tools all drifted under zero-emission mode. Not cloaked, just quiet. Inside the lead ship, TNS Cormorant, the crew reviewed engagement patterns developed 30 years ago. Files updated annually, but never opened. Until now. Below Antarctica, inside Black Site Atlas 7, an AI core named Thren came online. It spoke only once. Simulation protocols terminated. Combat logic active. Awaiting final release key. Sunfall. It did not ask why. It had waited 11 down days for this. Back on Earth, Minister Alrik Dasan stepped out of his diplomatic cruiser into the subterranean hall beneath UN Defense Command Geneva. His face, still fresh from the treaty ceremony, remained blank. His staff waited behind him. Silent. A general met him in the hall. No handshake, no words, just a data pad. Dasan read it, nodded, and signed. Asset realignment authorized. Civilian front remains stable. If they're watching, give them the show. The general walked away. Desan turned toward the hidden command deck, his smile from Concordium now stripped down to steel. In system space, Earth's outer sphere assets activated in sequence. Deep lens solar arrays pivoted, already programmed to become blind zones for fleet staging. Orbital mining satellites began to eject non-compliant drones, those with any foreign code signatures. Luna defense batteries rotated slowly, heat dissipating coils, warming for the first time since their construction. The plan was not to win a surprise war. The plan was to force the enemy to reveal everything, and still lose. Inside the Andes facility, Colonel Halran stood before a long, dormant panel. He reached into a sealed compartment and withdrew a slim, black cylinder. Biometric locks accepted him. The lights turned amber. An aide asked quietly, "Confirming sunfall, Colonel?" He paused. "Not yet. Let them think we're still blinking." Meanwhile, on the edge of the solar system, a scout drone tagged inbound FTL signatures. The hegemony fleet was moving early. Bold, confident, exactly as expected. The signal passed directly to Thren. "Twilight-class incursion pattern confirmed. Alignment, 92.3% match." Inside Atlas 7, 300 fusion warheads were armed, not for launch, but for simulated decoys, radiating false engine heat across 10 vectors. Back in the Concordium chamber, Admiral Vec Trassel sipped his post-ceremony drink and examined the first phase reports. So far, Earth hadn't moved. "Predictable," he muttered. "Humans always gamble at the end. Always a bluff." His adjutant, a cold-eyed diplomat from the hegemony's inner circle, leaned in. "They've had no time to respond. It's already over." Trassel nodded, but paused a moment too long. There had been something in the Terran ambassador's voice. A cadence. A calm. Too calm. In Coldwell Command, Halran received the forward probe feeds. He reviewed trajectories, intercept windows, estimated force dispersion. He looked to the Chief of Targeting. "Do not lock them. Not yet." "Sir, let them arrive. Let them feel safe. Let them open their hands." He turned to the holomap. The knife was still in it. Still waiting. He could see it clearly now. They had brought the sword. But we were always the trap. The first blast didn't come from the sky. It came from orbit, Earth's orbit, and it was already waiting. 12 hegemony ships emerged from phase tunnel transit over the Pacific quadrant, hulls gleaming with unearned confidence. Their arrival was unsignaled, illegal, and immediate. They expected confusion, chaos, screams. What they got was silence. And then, light. In the control core beneath the Andes, Colonel Revik Halran stood with arms crossed as orbital telemetry painted the kill zone red. "Enemy vessels in range. Signature confirms Twilight Incursion Group." He gave a simple nod. "Confirm command. Execute condition Sunfall." Thousands of kilometers above him, 4 Terran orbital defense stations rotated in perfect sync. Odin 2, the largest, ejected all camouflage panels in a single burst, revealing plasma cannons the size of city blocks. 3 seconds later, Earth fired first. Not in desperation. In precision. The lead hegemony cruiser didn't explode. It ceased to exist, cleaved in half by a white-hot lance of magnetically compressed plasma that struck the reactor dead center. The second ship managed to fire. Once. Then, Odin 3's kinetic spine triggered, launching tungsten rods at near relativistic speed. No guidance needed. Just math. Just velocity. The rods tore through armor like glass. Inside the Terran defense network, AI Thren ran targeting solutions across 12 engagement clusters simultaneously. It did not think. It executed. Projected fleet survival for enemy group, 14.6%. Adjustment protocols engaged, compensating for overkill. It was holding back. Across Earth's major cities, sirens didn't sound, because evacuations had begun 3 weeks earlier under the guise of infrastructure repair drills. Shelters were stocked, civilians relocated. No panic, just readiness. On the bridge of the TNS Cormorant, lead ship of Fleet Group Revenant, the forward commander spoke only once. Revenant, actual to command. Primary aggression verified. Engaging forward response. Terran ships activated drive cores in sequence. No flashing lights, no declarations. They moved like blades unsheathed in the dark. Admiral Vec Trassel, still in orbit around the Concordium with his honor escort, received the combat report mid-meal. His second-in-command read it aloud. Terran surface shields active. Counterfire levels unacceptable. They knew. Trassel didn't respond for 5 seconds. Then he growled. They planned this. In Black Site Atlas 7, AI Thren deployed Signal Ghost Alpha, a decoy system that mimicked Earth's fleet transmissions. Enemy ships began engaging phantom signals, wasting munitions on non-existent targets. That wasn't Earth hiding. That was Earth bleeding their ammo before the real fight began. Inside Coldwell Command, Halran stood before the Global Defense Board, red lines tracing every confirmed hostile. Open CNET to full clearance. Let the fleet respond. The console officer hesitated. Sir, that's global launch clearance. Halran's voice was calm. That's what they wanted, isn't it? A war? He pressed his palm to the final release plate. Let them have it. Within 90 seconds, Revenant's destroyers cut the hegemony flanking maneuver at the Atlantic margin. Earth's orbital spine launched dummy stations that broke into thousands of drone shards, each one set to mimic a larger target signature. Subsurface railguns fired from hidden oceanic plates, pre-positioned for polar angles. Above Earth, what had been a coordinated incursion began to unravel. Hegemony ships moved out of formation. Command lost contact with 5 forward units. Enemy AI flagged irregular human tactics as non-doctrinal behavior. Of course it was. Nothing in Earth's doctrine was standard anymore. On the Moon, the backup command crew observed as one Terran satellite platform shut down mid-engagement, then restarted with new code mid-fire, scrambling enemy jamming arrays. Who programmed that? An officer asked. The response, we did, 30 years ago. In Concordium space, Trassel stood on the observation deck as fire bloomed across Earth's low orbit. His nostril flared against the window. They weren't supposed to be ready. His adjutant stayed quiet. Then, softly, they weren't just ready. They were waiting. Colonel Halran folded his arms as new signals came in. Status? Enemy Phase Group 2 inbound, 60 ships. Halran didn't flinch. They'll find graves where they expected prey. Keep the lights dark until they're in range, then burn them all. In the sky, fire bloomed, and in its center, Earth stood still, unyielding, calculated, prepared. The enemy didn't fall from orbit. They were pulled down. The second wave of hegemony ships entered low Earth atmosphere in rigid descent formations, expecting soft targets and scattered resistance. What they found was a battlefield engineered to kill them. In the Andes command tier, Colonel Revik Halran monitored impact telemetry. Enemy transports descending in synchronized burn lines, standard doctrine for rapid planetary domination. He tilted his head slightly. Now. A command signal fired. From the surface, dozens of evacuation shelters across every continent suddenly reversed polarity. Hinges shifted, ports opened, and concealed rail systems retracted roof panels. They were never shelters. They were vertical launch tubes, and they fired. High-density flak rounds detonated mid-air, shattering drop capsules before they cleared cloud cover. Enemy crews, trained to hit the ground running, were instead reduced to burning fragments across the upper stratosphere. In Beijing, what had been a public metro depot exploded upward, launching a shockwave dome across 5 square blocks. Inside the crater, Terran exo squads in low-profile armor emerged in disciplined pairs. No war cries, no chants. Just code checks and synced HUD links. The lead unit commander keyed in a phrase used only in buried protocol layers. Condition: Gardenfall. Response pattern: Delta 7. His team advanced under fire without pause. From orbit, Fleet Group Revenant didn't stop firing. But now it switched to targeted orbital support, feeding precise coordinates to the surface. Each projectile was independently tracking, zeroing in on battlefield zones, where hegemony assets had massed for coordinated landings. Those landings never happened. On Earth's western seaboard, a coastal city had been left intact on purpose. Power, comms, and population untouched. A trap. One of the largest enemy landers descended toward its center. Trassel's fleet had marked it as a primary strike vector, based on its old data of human military patterning. As it neared the rooftops, a signal embedded in the city's grid activated. Entire blocks collapsed inward, revealing a layered kill box. Every rooftop a mounted turret, every alley pre-coded for directional EMP bursts. And beneath the city, a powered magnetic net, synchronized with Revenant's orbital pulse weapons. The hegemony lander was pulled down with such force, it collapsed under its own weight. The blast shockwave flattened 12 surrounding blocks, but there were no civilians left to kill. They'd been gone for weeks. Inside Coldwell, Halloran observed the city's dust plume rise on satellite feed. They hit exactly where we left the door open. The operations chief nodded. Projected third wave response? Halloran narrowed his eyes. They'll panic. Break pattern. That's when we finish cutting. Across the Atlantic corridor, Terran armored divisions rolled from subterranean hangars directly onto a continental plain. Human armor was outdated by Galactic standards. Less shielding, more mass. But it didn't matter, because they knew the terrain, because they wrote their own doctrine, because they weren't there to trade shots. In southern Africa, a Terran ground unit advanced through ruins, engineered to confuse enemy targeting AI. Staggered walls, livestock pattern heat signatures. Their commander gave no name, only orders. Every mistake the hegemony made was put there. On Luna Station, Minister Alric Desan observed from a black glass command gallery, his face unreadable. Behind him, senior officers watched, hands behind their backs. He spoke into the command channel. Inform Trassel, we are still honoring the treaty. He will receive our counterproposal in 30 minutes, in the form of wreckage. Admiral Vec Trassel stood inside the Concordium's orbital suite, watching flames climb Earth's upper atmosphere. He heard no human screams, no requests for mercy. Only reports. Primary wave destroyed. Secondary unable to deploy groundside. Casualty estimates. Irreversible. His hands tightened behind his back. They planned this entire war, around letting us begin it. From orbit, TNS Cormorant switched to low-altitude hover. Carrier doors opened. Drop teams deployed. In the streets of Lagos, 2 Terran soldiers helped guide a wounded civilian across crumbled stone. Behind them, enemy infantry units tried to regroup and found themselves flanked by drones that had emerged from the sewers. On rooftops, civilian volunteers handed out water, food, ammo. These weren't survivors. They were part of the fight. In Coldwell, Halloran checked the final report. Ground landing zones were secure. Enemy phasecraft, 71% neutralized. Surface resistance was minimal. He didn't speak. He just watched a camera feed of a human child stepping out of a shelter, pointing upward, toward a burning piece of enemy wreckage falling across the blue sky. The sky had fallen, but not on Earth. Not this time. The war reached the streets, and the streets were already waiting. In the city of Darun, what the hegemony believed was a soft landing zone had become a theater of loss. Their remaining infantry, freshly deployed from smoking drop pods, fanned out into ruins that looked untouched. But the stillness was bait. 30 meters into Sector 7, the lead hegemony formation vanished in a chain of shaped charges, implanted inside load-bearing walls 5 years earlier. Entire facades collapsed with surgical precision, reducing forward scouts to fractured signals. The others hesitated. That was their second mistake. On the second floor of a blasted medical wing, Colonel Revik Halloran stepped over broken glass and knelt beside a map patch projected on the ground. His exosuit was scorched down one shoulder. Dust clung to his jaw. A nearby operative checked a portable scanner. Second wave pinned between corridors Alpha and Kappa. They've split formation. Halloran didn't look up. He didn't need to. Collapse them. K-17 fallback. Stagger pattern. Run them blind. Down the street, 2 Terran fire teams moved through the smoke. No shouting, no radio chatter. Just silent nods and boots on concrete. These weren't brute soldiers. These were mathematicians with rifles. Each move calibrated, each kill point chosen not for effect, but for outcome. A hegemony trooper turned a corner, saw a lone human crouched in cover, unarmored, unmoving. He charged. By the time he reached the target, the floor beneath him had dissolved into a liquid sink trap. Polymers turned fluid under remote charge. He fell into the trap. He didn't come back up. Above, on the edge of a fractured overpass, a team of civilian SNR volunteers watched in disbelief as Terran Marines cleared an enemy flanking unit with nothing but knives and angles. One turned to the man beside her. "They don't fight like soldiers." He shook his head slowly. "No, they fight like executioners, already certain of the outcome." In orbit, the TNS Cormorant support uplinks fed enhanced targeting data to ground units. Every human formation now operated with partial orbital overwatch, turning alleys into trap lanes and rooftops into sniper sanctuaries. One hegemony command drone flagged Earth's counter pattern as non-linear, unpredictable, asymmetrical. It couldn't calculate what wasn't there, so it guessed. And Earth punished every guess. Atop a collapsed church in northern Africa, Minister Alrik Desan stood with a mobile command slate in hand. Around him, med teams stabilized wounded civilians. The fighting here was over. He walked past a pile of rubble where a makeshift field station was being assembled. A young civilian, no older than 15, looked up from helping drag supply crates. "Why are you here?" the boy asked. Desan glanced down, the sky behind him still streaked with fire. Because this is still our street, and no one else answers for it. On the city's outer edge, a final hegemony walker burned under coordinated assault from 3 directions. Terran soldiers didn't rush. They rotated fire, each taking 2 shots, moving, watching. 1 bullet missed. No one spoke, but the soldier who fired dropped to 1 knee, recalibrated manually, and waited for his next window. Precision mattered. Style did not. Inside Coldwell, Halran stared at the shifting tactical map. Every red dot that vanished represented 1 less enemy on Earth. Every blue one that blinked out, something else. His second-in-command stepped closer. Reports confirmed 7 civilian sectors resecured. No mass displacement. Minimal loss. Enemy ground command fractured. Halran didn't respond immediately. He was watching one feed in particular. A group of survivors, civilians, were taking back their own street. No Terran soldiers present. No command given. They weren't fighting with weapons. They were dragging barriers, stacking rubble into cover, wiring basic traps. They had watched. They had learned. They had remembered. Far above, AI Thren intercepted a final burst transmission from a retreating hegemony scout drone. Earth is not a battlefield. It is a predator with cities for teeth. Thren stored the quote. It did not share it. Not yet. As dusk rolled across the plains, Terran soldiers moved through cleared sectors, offering water, food, hand-signed comm signals to those too shocked to speak. One Marine handed a young man a ration bar. The boy took it. Paused. "Are we safe now?" The Marine looked up at the sky, still scorched, still dangerous, then back down. "No, but we're still standing." In orbit, Fleet Group Revenant maintained position. Engines off. No music. No broadcast. Just quiet. The streets were burning, but the people were alive. And this time, they weren't just watching. The hegemony command structure didn't break. It unraveled, one decision at a time. High above Earth, the remnants of the Twilight Fleet regrouped behind the gravity shadow of Luna. Formations scatter, signal bleed, cross-channel interference. They weren't retreating, they were confused. And confusion was the first cut. Inside the TNS Cormorant, the command deck glowed soft red as fire control maps updated in real time. Revenant's fleet sat in weapons-silent orbit, waiting for the next move, not from Earth's high command, but from the enemy, because Earth already knew what they'd do next. In Coldwell Command, Colonel Rivik Halrin stood before a massive wraparound display. Every sector pulsed with updates, but one screen, deep field telemetry, drew his attention. The hegemony fleet was shifting, erratic, defensive. "They're spreading too thin," said the signal chief. Halran's reply was calm. "They think the threat is random. They're trying to fight chaos with doctrine." He keyed in a command. "Let's give them more chaos." Back in orbit, AI Thren released Operation Mirror Line, a falsified sensor burst using lunar-reflected signals and overlapping frequency ghosts. To enemy scanners, it looked like an entire Terran reinforcement fleet was arriving from the opposite side of Earth. The hegemony panicked. They repositioned half their remaining carriers right into a kill zone previously abandoned. "Fire pattern Alpha Veil," Halran ordered. From Earth's lower stratosphere, coil-launched missiles deployed, arcing not toward visible ships, but toward pre-calculated points where the enemy would be. Every warhead found target. On the surface, cities had stabilized, but Earth wasn't done. Reprogrammed construction drones began rearranging buildings, altering heat signatures and electronic echoes. The cities themselves became false targets. Whole neighborhoods were evacuated just long enough to serve as sensor traps. Enemy recon drones would scan, see mass movement, and call in strikes. Those strikes hit empty shells and were immediately counter-fired from buried rail platforms now exposed. In a scorched zone outside Sao Paulo, a 3-unit hegemony crawler line advanced. Plasma turrets and deflective armor. They lasted 2.7 minutes. Terran units emerged from subsurface ambush tunnels, rerouted from defunct mining projects. Every shot placed with purpose. Not destruction. Disable, disrupt, delay. By the time they realized they were being outmaneuvered, a precision orbital strike from the Cormorant erased the lead crawler. No wasted fire, no friendly casualties. In the Concordium chamber, Admiral Vec Trassel read a field report through gritted teeth. Hegemony 5th Division has lost signal cohesion. 2nd Fleet no longer responding to primary relay. Dozens of Terran decoy signatures confirmed. He turned to his adjutant. How did they learn to fracture command integrity? The reply came after a beat. They didn't. They built for it. Inside Coldwell, Halran reviewed a flashing message from Atlas 7. Phase protocol, Aegis unlocked. Target, hegemony command, relay, buoy array. Action, disruption. Package authorized. He didn't hesitate. This was the final disruption layer, the one meant to end coordination entirely. He keyed a 3-symbol code. Far above Earth, a disguised comm satellite sent a single compressed burst into the hegemony's command net, encrypted like a system update. And it worked. For 12 minutes. Every hegemony command ship saw a different battlefield. No 2 maps matched. No 2 leaders gave the same orders. Some fled, some froze. A few fired on their own. From the surface, 1 human unit reported it in real time. "Sir, they're turning on each other." Halran blinked once. "Leave them to it." Minister Alric Desan, back at Luna Command, stood at the edge of the crater rim. His comm screen showed the hegemony capital fleet, pulsing with fragmentation signals. He spoke only once. "This is not a counterattack. It's a lesson never to be forgotten." By hour's end, nearly half the remaining hegemony forces had either retreated or self-isolated from command. Earth's losses were measured, but not light. Inside Coldwell, Halran stood as a name was added to the wall of shadow. A special operations team lost behind enemy lines, holding long enough to delay a strike that never landed. He touched the glass. No ceremony, no words. Just a name, and a legacy built on preparation no one saw coming. Up in orbit, the TNS Cormorant powered forward. Not to chase, to observe, to ensure. Because the tide hadn't just turned. It had been planned to turn, right here. The enemy finally asked for terms. Earth sent none. In the shattered corridor of hegemony command space, 4 battlecruisers held formation in retreat, signals flashing with unencrypted distress. Their command net had collapsed, orders conflicted, coordinates looped, units bled out of existence, 1 ping at a time. And still, Earth did not pursue. Because Earth was not chasing. Earth was waiting. On the bridge of the TNS Cormorant, targeting markers pulsed across the view screen. Not as threats, as coordinates, already calculated, already verified, already dead. Fleet Group Revenant held position, engines cold, weapons warm. Colonel Revik Halran stood behind the forward ops station, arms folded, face unreadable. Not a victor's pride, not bloodlust, just clarity. His comms officer looked up. Hegemony flagship transmitting. Something new. Halran didn't respond. The message played anyway. This is Admiral Trassel of the Galactic Hegemony. We seek to negotiate. We propose ceasefire. We recognize the sovereignty of... He raised a hand. The audio cut. Targeting solution? Locked. Fire. The plasma beam struck the Hegemony flagship mid-broadcast. One moment, Trassel's ship was there. Dignified. Armored. Superior. The next, it was silent debris tumbling into cold black. In Coldwell Command, Minister Alric Dasan stood before the strategic board as sector after sector blinked clean. A junior officer swallowed hard. "Sir, that was their surrender broadcast." Dasan didn't look at him. Surrender is for wars. This wasn't a war. This was a warning we answered late. Above the lunar shelf, Revenant's destroyers cut the last intact carrier group at range. Without response. No chase. No dialogue. Just judgment. A single Hegemony support vessel fired a distress beacon toward open space. A Terran satellite intercepted the signal. Message blocked. Target scrubbed. Inside Atlas 7, AI Thren marked the operation log as complete. Status: Justice delivered. Casualty analysis: acceptable. Collateral: minimal. Confidence: total. Colonel Halran stood at the viewport, watching fragments of the enemy fleet drift without power. Every time Earth had hesitated in the past, the galaxy wrote it off as weakness. This time, they'd planned every silence, every moment they'd waited. Every inch they gave was a calculated loss to bring the enemy deeper, tighter, closer. "How many ships left?" he asked. His XO answered, 23, retreating, no coordination. Halran gave the order. "Let them go." "Sir, let them carry the story." Back aboard the Cormorant, the fleet prepared for withdrawal. No victory parade. No comms broadcast. Just a final data packet sent to every known Hegemony listening post. Its contents? The names of every civilian site targeted. Footage of Earth's restraint. And then, Earth's fire. No threat. No promise. Just memory. In Coldwell, Minister Dasan gave the final order. "Deactivate combat net. Return protocols to silence." A moment passed. The ops floor stilled. Dasan looked to Halran, who hadn't moved. "You did well." Halran's eyes stayed on the sky feed. "We did what was required." The enemy had begged. Earth answered, without cruelty, without hatred. Just the cold, final clarity of earned justice. Their fleets burned, their records survived. And Earth made sure the last thing they remembered was fire.